Hello, welcome to another Becoming a Modern Man. We are playing Mono Green Tron, and this time we're playing against the Blue-White Spirits deck that we played in our last article. So let's see how this one goes. So this opener is pretty horrible. It doesn't really do anything. It doesn't have all the Tron pieces, so I can't keep this. This is also pretty awful. This is probably mulligan as well. I think I keep this, but it probably should have been a mulligan. I mean, we've got Chromatic Star into Sylvan Scrying, and I suppose if we draw another Tron piece in one of our initial draws, we'll maybe be in a good position, decent position. See Expedition map on top. I can't remember if I keep it yet. We'll keep that on top. So I suppose we can find two Tron pieces as it stands. So we crack the Chromatic Star, we go for the Expedition map, but unfortunately our opponent has a Spell Pierce to deal with that, which puts us in a fairly bad position. We play Sylvan Scrying here, which resolves and find a Tron piece, but things are not looking great for us. The opponent plays Rattle Chains at the end of turn, followed by a Drog Skull Captain, and attacks for 3. We can play our Oblivion Stone and drop our 4th land, but our opponent plays a Selfless Spirit, which means that he's going to be able to protect his creatures from Oblivion Stone. We don't find our 5th land, which obviously is a problem. It's able to attack for 8 here. Put us down to 4. We found our 5th land, but it's not going to be good enough with the Selfless Spirit, so unfortunately it doesn't quite work out for us. So yeah, kind of an awkward hand. We stalled more because of our own plays than what our opponent did. Although I suppose the Spell Pierce on the Expedition map was fairly relevant. But yeah, unfortunately, we weren't fast enough for this particular game. So here we are with sideboard against Blue-White Spirits. I suppose there's not a ton of stuff. I think we probably want Spatial Contortion and probably the Warping Whale as well. Basically the cards that we're probably most concerned about are Leaning Arbiter, which obviously is going to be a problem, and Thalia. And Warping Whale is an answer for Thalia, and Spatial Contortion is an answer for both of them. So I think we probably want to bring those in as ways of dealing with those particular cards. From there, I guess they play Aethervial, so I suppose you could bring in Nature's Claim, but I just don't know if it's really going to be good enough. If they don't draw a Vial, then it's not particularly relevant. They're not particularly good, so I don't think we'd even bother with bringing those in necessarily. I can see bringing Thought-Knot Seer. I mean, there's a potential for them to disrupt our mana, so maybe it's a good idea to just have a big threat on the board. Obviously, attacking with a 4/4 turn after turn might outrace their smaller flyers. Thragtusk also seems good. Getting 5 life is pretty huge against them, and they're going to struggle to win that back. Also, it's very difficult for them to deal with in general. So I think Thragtusks come in, possibly Thought-Knot Seers, but I'm not sure we necessarily need to bother with that. And I think Spatial Contortion and Warping Whale is removal for the sort of problem cards. In terms of what we're taking out, I think we probably take out one of the Euler Logs, one of the Emrakuls. Ugin's still fairly good. Khan's possibly not as good as he could be, so maybe we could cut 1 or 2 Khans, because it's possibly not his best matchup. There isn't a ton of stuff to exile, and so I don't think Khan is at his best. Worldbreaker still seems decent and also can block flyers, so that's useful. Wormcoil's not bad. Obviously the life gain is a pretty big swing, so we probably still want Wormcoils, or some number thereof. Otherwise, I think that's it really. We could bring Needle to turn off Vial, but I don't think that seems really worthwhile. So yeah, I think bring in a removal, bring in the Thragtusks, and potentially the Thought-Knot Seers, but I think the main ones to bring in Thragtusk and Special Contortion and Warping Whale, and maybe everything else is possibly slightly over the top. Okay, here we are with game 2 against Blue White Spirits. This is our opening hand. It's not the best, but it's decent. I suppose we've got turn 1 Chromatic Star into a Sylvan Scrying. Obviously, if we find the second Tron piece, then we're doing all right. Looks like I did bring in the Thought Not Seers as a threat, which I quite like it. Plays Needle and names Chromatic Star, which is pretty annoying given that we have another Chromatic Star in our hand, which is now stuck. We draw to Expedition Map, which is very nice, which means we're going to be able to get turn 4 Tron online. And there's a Selfless Spirit. We draw into another Tron piece. Just going to run our Expedition Map here and pass. Opponent seems to be stuck on blue mana, or without blue mana, more appropriately. We draw as this tower. We play Thragtusk here, gain 5 life, go all the way to 23, and we have a substantial beta while our opponent seems to be struggling. Opponent paths the Thragtusk, but we still end up with a 3/3 token. And our opponent concedes on the next turn. Presumably just didn't find a blue source and didn't like the way that this game was going, because obviously we're going to be able to outrace him. We've got Tron online. Thought Not Seer would have come down next turn and would have been pretty brutal, and then we'd been attacking for 7 each turn, so I don't think our opponent stood much of a chance at that point. So that worked out pretty well. Our sideboard's guards showed up and did well. And our opponent really stalled and didn't really make much progress. Okay, here we are, game 3. This hand's interesting. I mean, obviously, it's got all the tools we need to get where we need to go. Obviously, the potential issue is if we don't draw a second land. I can't remember if I risked this. I think I might have done. Yeah. I took a chance on it. It's certainly risky, because obviously if we hadn't drawn that second land, we would have been fairly stuck. But it's a fairly good hand otherwise. So get to drop the Expedition Map here. We draw the Sanctum of Ugin, so we are going to be able to activate Expedition Map, which is good. We draw into another Expedition Map, which is possibly, well, actually, given that we haven't got a green source, I suppose it is pretty useful. Gets the Plains, plays a Rattle Chains, which is not overly concerning at this moment in time. Attacks with 2. Gonna get to search up a power plant. Okay, so or did we search up a tower? Either way, we've got Tron for next turn. And plays a Geist of Centraft, which is quite interesting, and obviously flashes it into play thanks to Rattle Chains. It's ability that allows you to flash in spirits, so that's kind of interesting. It's only an interesting development here. Decided Warping Whale away the Rattle Chains here. Obviously we've already got Tron, so we don't necessarily need to search with this Expedition Map as it stands, so decided to just pass with that up. We can get hit for 6 here with the Geist, which is obviously quite painful. We've got 8 mana here, so I'm going to play a Walking Ballista before with a 4 power. I'm also going to sack the Sanctum of Ugin to find a Worm Coil Engine, which obviously will hopefully keep us nice and alive. We could have Expedition Mapped before we tutored. Actually would have worked out slightly better, I think. I don't have the chat If we played the Sanctum of Ugin, that's fine, but otherwise I think we possibly should have Expedition mapped and searched up this tower to give us more mana for next turn. But anyway, our opponent drops in a Rattle Chains. I decided to ping it now. I don't think that that's necessarily the right thing to do in hindsight. As it turns out, our opponent has another Rattle Chains and is able to protect the initial one. There's a Drogskull Captain, which is a little bit annoying. So what we're doing here is going to block the Geist, and then we're going to be able to ping the Drogskull Captain. Obviously then shrinks the Rattle Chains, so we end up taking 6 here. Right, there's a Power Plant, which is good. Addition to our mana. I found the tower here. Don't know if I could have done that last turn, I can't remember. But anyway, we play the Oblivion Stone here. I decided to blow it up now. Basically, I don't want to risk our opponent having Selfless Spirit, because with Rattle Chains out, he could flash that into play and save his guys. So with only 1 mana up, I decided that it's safer just to blow up the Oblivion Stone now, make sure that he doesn't have a Selfless Spirit, and just pass back. Opponent plays Bygone Bishop, which is kind of interesting. I haven't seen this in other lists, but obviously it's a way of getting some clue tokens online. I'm just going to drop Wormcoil Engine here, which is going to be fairly good. Hopefully she's getting some life. Opponent has another Geist, and also gets a clue token off of that thanks to the Bygone Bishop. Just a little bit concerning. Opponent flies over for 2. I get Sylvan Scrying on my turn, which finds a Ghost Quarter, not that that's particularly relevant. I'm just going to keep the Wormcoil back to block. Opponent plays Mausoleum Wanderer. Have you guessed a creature spell with 3 or less? Okay. Alright, so yeah, that's a fairly good source of card advantage. So corrects the clue. Attacking with the Bygone Bishop, so this is down to 2 here, which is a little bit concerning. Actually, what we should have done, as I later realised, or shortly after I played it, we should have played the Sylvan Scrying last turn. I mean, we didn't really need to in general, anyway. But what we should have done is kept up Nature's Claim, because if he had found an attack that was useful, we could have Nature's Claimed our own Wormcoil Engine to gain 4 life, and then we would have been able to block with one of the life linkers, and then that would work out pretty nicely and hopefully save us from dying. So yeah, I mean, our opponent presumably was searching for Path to Exile, so that would have been a good response to a Path to Exile. So that's what we should have really done, is kept that up. Because yeah, otherwise we would have died to our opponent finding Path to Exile. Fortunately, they didn't, so that's okay. And we do end up drawing Oblivion Stone, which is great here. So we're going to be able to attack, gain 6 life, Oblivion Stone, and then obviously we get the tokens. Our opponent gets nothing. And yeah, our opponent can see from there, as obviously we're going to tick up in life, and our opponent's probably not got a lot that he can do to answer that. But yeah, I mean, we should have really kept up the Nature's Claim that previous turn, in case our opponent had found the Path to Exile, and then we would have had an answer to that. So yeah, interesting matchup. I think we're pretty heavily favoured, I think. I guess Leonin Arbiter is kind of a concern, as is Thalia in terms of its ability to slow us down. But I think otherwise, I think we're fairly heavily favoured. Our creatures are a lot better than theirs. If we're sticking Thragtusks and Wormcoil Engines and Karns and things, then they're really going to struggle. So I think this matchup probably works out well in general and seems pretty favourable.